What's up, everybody? It's Joe here with Joseph Blake Photography, and in this video we're going to be talking about some news that we have that is pretty much gonna happen. You can take it to the bank about the Canon R1 flagship camera, as well as the R5 Mark II, and what we can expect this year from Canon. Before we get into the video, again, my name is Joe. This is Joseph Blake Photography. This is my channel. I was off of YouTube for about a year. I got demonetized. My website shut down. My Instagram and Facebook got hacked and then deleted. And I am getting back into the saddle. On the saddle, getting into the saddle. I'm doing saddle related things. So I would very much appreciate it if you would go and hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell, do all the YouTube stuff to let the algorithm know that I'm doing a good job making content for YouTube. Also, I'd love to see you over on my Instagram. I'm slowly but surely repopulating it with some of the photos and stuff that I've taken over the years. Okay, getting into this news. The Canon rumor mill about the R1, obviously it's been going strong. It exists, of course. And we got some news late last year that it was starting to be put into the hands of early adopters, those professional photographers that we would expect to be able to test this camera. We also got information like, oh, it's gonna be an 8K shooter. It's gonna have maybe the same, if not more resolution than the R5. So, you know, we're looking at 45, 50, 55, 60 megapixels. I think there was a lot of crosstalk around the R5, potentially the R5 Mark II, you know, maybe a high resolution Mark V, high resolution R5, there's too many letters. And I think a lot of that information started to kind of bleed in, right? We also heard that while quad pixel autofocus is potentially ready, it's not going to be in the R1. We also were hearing about an R3 Mark II, all this stuff. All of that has been flying around. And so the expectation coming into this year was that we would see an R1 potentially around the time of the Olympics, and that camera would be the absolute top of everything as it relates to Canon hardware. Not only would it be the best video shooter, the best still shooter, the highest resolution, most stacked. They're just stacking stacked sensors on stacked sensors. It was gonna be just an absolute beast. I think a lot of that was wishful thinking. And now what we're getting is reality. Reality is setting in. So the rumor that we now have, which is from Canon Rumors, but it is their CR3 level. This rumor can write checks. It can rent a car. It's legit. This rumor tells us that not only will the R1 come long before an R5 Mark II, which would make sense, right? I would expect that we see the R1 by the Olympics, but that it's not going to be the high resolution super mega video shooter that we would expect. That tells me this is going to be an iterative improvement over a little bit of everything of what we've had, right? We have the 1DX Mark III, and now we're going to have the R1. So here's what I think we're going to see. I do think we're going to get a resolution bump over the R3 and the R6 Mark II with the 24 megapixel sensor. I think it's going to be somewhere between 24 and 32, maybe 35. I think around 30, honestly. I do believe it will have quad pixel autofocus, but what that means is that it will not have 8K shooting. And I think that's okay. I think Canon really wants to differentiate its cameras. The camera landscape has changed so significantly because of smartphones that a lot of the areas where you would say, oh, well, you know, Canon's gonna make you know, one camera for sports shooters and one camera for video and portraits, and then they're gonna make the 1D or the R1 be the grand king of it all. I don't think that that's really their calculation anymore. I think that what they're gonna look at is who buys these cameras. Sports shooters, in some cases, studio photographers, action shooters, photojournalists, people where getting the right shot at the right moment is going to make a considerable difference. So what do they need? They need reliability, they need dependability, they need features, and they need speed more than anything. They need it to lock on focus every time. They need to be able to shoot 1 billion photos a second, and they need those photos to be absolute rock solid and make sure that they're always great. And doing a new 60 megapixel sensor or something is not going to give them that. That's going to be gigantic files. That means that they're going to have to develop potentially a new CPU that can handle the memory there. And you get potentials for more noise, lower capability in low light, that sort of stuff. No, I think they're going to stick with the lower resolution. Again, maybe a little higher than the R3. Again, 30 megapixels, I think, is where we're looking. 8K is not where it's going to be, because if you want to shoot 8K, you buy an R5 or an R5C, or the C series, the Cinema series. Why cannibalize the Cinema series? Now you might be asking yourself, well, if you buy the top-end camera, you should be able to do everything, right? I don't want to have to buy the top-end camera and not get the best cinema features. Canon has an answer for that. If you want the cinema features, you buy a cinema camera. If you want the best stills camera, you buy the best stills camera. And I think that's what we're going to get out of the R1. We're going to get the best stills camera with the best features. It's going to be an amazing video camera, and that's it. And price-wise, I think we're still going to be looking at $59.99 to $69.99. So $6 to $7 grand. You know, the folks who are making their living, the photographers who are making their living developing these photos, or producing these photos, not developing, but producing these photos for photojournalism, for sports, for news, for action. I think that is where the money's at for Canon at this top end. They're going to move a lot fewer of these things than their consumer level kit. And so they don't have to push as hard at this super high level to fill all of these different areas. I think they can just say, you know what, this is the best shooter there is. 40 frames a second, you know, maybe 20 plus mechanical, dual CF Express slots. It's going to have the Ethernet jack, right? It's going to have 10 gig Ethernet. It'll probably have Wi-Fi 6 or maybe even Wi-Fi 7 since the spec just got officially certified. It's going to have quad pixel AF, and it's going to have that absolutely phenomenal eye tracking that we are hearing they've improved considerably. And I think that's it. I think that's what you can expect from this camera. And I think it's going to disappoint some people who are hoping for this just magnum, super awesome duper, you know, Optimus Prime camera that can just transform into a little bit of everything. But that doesn't make sense for Canon from a business standpoint, right? If you want the fastest shooter that also shoots the best video, then you buy the R5. And if you want the best shooter that also shoots video, then you buy the R1 or the R3. Which then brings me to kind of the cadence of these announcements. So I would expect that by February, right, when we've got some conventions going on, some photo events happening, that you're going to see an announcement of a development of this camera. They're going to announce the official development. They'll probably leak a couple of specs, some of the high-end features that you're going to expect, and then we'll slowly but surely get this kind of trickle out of the specs and features and all that sort of stuff. Similarly to how we got the R3. And then I think we'll get an announcement of an official release later this year, probably by end of second, early third quarter for official availability. Then I think we will get the R5 Mark II with maybe a slight resolution bump and feature bumps similar to the R6 Mark II, where we'll see some just quality of life improvements, iterating, just improving, making the autofocus a little bit better, maybe improving some speeds. It'll be better in its own way. And there will be areas where they overlap. There will be areas where the R5 is better than the R1, and the R1 is better than the R5, and the R3 is better than the R5. But they do that because they figure if you want the best, you're probably going to have to buy more than one camera. It's in their best business interest. There are companies that have fleets of these things and they want them to have a mix. If it was just a one and done, that wouldn't make sense for them, or they'd have to charge $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for it. And I know that there are people who are going to say, well, that doesn't make any sense because they have competition from Sony and they have the Nikon and you know, the Z9, and yes. But in the mirrorless world now, with the Canon glass that we have and the Canon glass that keeps getting announced and the specs that we're seeing out of these cameras, I don't think at this level they're anticipating a lot of people jumping ship. So we're going to see a development announcement next month. We're going to see the camera in the summer. We're going to see the R5 Mark II in the fall. And this camera will be a great camera. It's going to be amazing, and it's going to have some awesome features. But I think it'll look and feel a lot more like the R3 or like the 1DX Mark III, the 1D series, the R1, the 1. I think it'll feel a lot more like what a 1 is normally going to feel like. A little lower megapixels than the rest, super fast, best images, best autofocusing, and that's it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Again, please feel free to hit the subscribe and like button, and I will see you in the next one.